Welcome. Thank you for downloading this episode of Parks and Conversation. Today we will be rewatching and discussing Season 2, Episode 2, The Stakeout. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my friend Jeremy. Say hello, Jeremy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you, man?
Well. How are you?
Good. Good. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
So good. Good to hear.
Glad we got that out of the way.
Yeah. Well, social distancing. It's rough. I forgot how to have conversations with people outside of my immediate family.
Other than like typing.
Yeah. My my face. It don't work good.
Face
I can
work,
write things.
mouth work bad.
And I can talk directly into a camera if I need to. But when there's another person on the other end of this conversation, it's like, and this, we're saying all these things, and who knows? Maybe the COVID-19 situation is all over by the time this actually gets posted. But right now, we're in the thick of it, and so it's craziness.
Wish us luck, future
yes,
people.
Please, yeah, please. And maybe you downloaded this, in 2048, and you were like, "What's this podcast situation? I like parks. I like conversations," and you had no idea this was even about a TV show called Parks and Recreation. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. There was a real big sickness happening in our country, and I'm glad that you were able to find this after the wreckage of our civilization.
And yet somehow you made it to season 2.
Maybe this is the only one that survived.
I think
the internet.
I think that's a great segue because this is going to be the best episode ever.
You think so?
Once we start it, yeah.
Well, this is all recording, so this is all started. This is all on tape. So this episode is called The Stakeout, and it is essentially Leslie has created a community garden in the pit, and she is tending to the garden one day and finds that somebody seems to have planted marijuana, the devil weed, in the garden.
What's your opinion on community gardens?
I think
that was going to go a different way, wasn't it?
I'm ready. Community gardens are a gateway garden into a life of horticulture that you just, they call it a green thumb, but really it's a greed thumb. Because pretty soon, this is dumb. Pretty soon, you're like, hey, man, I'm not sharing my zucchini with you. Or you're growing huge zucchini and you become a zucchini pusher. And people are like, I don't even like zucchini. It's like, well, just give it a try, man. Give it a try.
Is that why people have so much of it?
Make it in some bread.
Just can't get rid of it.
Making zucchini edibles. Zucchini BD, ZBD.
ZBD. Zucchini brownies are the best.
Are they? I've never had a zucchini brownie. Are they good?
No, I don't know. I thought we were doing a whole thing on zucchini, dude.
I don't know. I did go to somebody's house a while ago, like a couple years ago. An older couple. I was visiting them and just saying hi, and she had made cupcakes, and they were delicious. And as I was eating them, she said, "There's sauerkraut in them." It's like, what? Yeah, they're sauerkraut. It keeps them moist. I was like, oh, okay. I'm learning so much today.
And fermented.
Yeah,
these are the best fermented cupcakes I've ever had.
I should have known when she crumbled hers up and put it on a hot dog.
What's after a community garden? Like if that's the gateway, then where do you go?
Well, then you start doing a bigger grow operation where you build a greenhouse in your basement.
Like a farmer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you want to keep it on the DL. That's why this is an underground operation in this episode, because it is literally below ground in the pit. So thinking about this community garden situation, she's built this garden in the pit, right? It's not the best place for light.
Well, and not only that, but it's the soil can't be great.
Right. Yeah.
You
I just don't understand.
You dug down past the topsoil. Everyone knows the nutrients is in like the first several inches of soil.
Everyone knows.
Yeah, you're down into the hard pan, the rock, the sedimentary layers. It's just not good growing material.
The garbage that people have been throwing down into the pit.
I mean, that could eventually turn into fertilizer, but you got to give it at least a good 20, 30 years.
Yeah. And Leslie, if we know anything about Leslie, nope, she is not patient. So, unless there was a big time gap between episode 1 and episode 2 of season 2. I don't think so.
No.
There's no way to know for sure. I don't have the screenplay in front of me. And it didn't have a 20 years later.
Plus, they don't look different.
They don't. And they don't have flying cars like in Blade Runner. So.
That's the reason. There you go.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, there's 3 main plot lines to this episode. We're completely off the rails, and this is the one that worked. There's 3 main plot lines. There's Leslie and the garden and the weed and the stake out there. Then there's a plot line with Anne and Mark because Leslie gave Anne the go-ahead to pursue a relationship with Mark Brandanowitz. And then there's the C line, which has Ron Swanson, who is suffering the effects of a hernia that was aggravated when he, as he said, made the mistake of sneezing. So those are the 3 main lines. Of the 3, Jeremy, which one is your favorite?
I was just thinking that Ron's, this is hard not to get too serious. It's the funniest line, in my opinion. It's the funniest thread, but I think it's because it's not as prevalent. It's not the main line, so you're able to have those jokes and make it kind of ridiculous. Whereas you actually need the main thread, the pit and the garden, to be a little bit more realistic to move the story along. But I really like what they do with Ron, kind of keeping him in the background. But he does, eventually become front and center in several episodes, which I think also makes, looking back on these shows, these sub characters kind of have to step up to take the pressure off of the main character. So I just went way off the rails there. But yeah, I like which one did you like?
Well, I would agree that I think Ron and April's storyline is the most fun part of this episode, but I also I really like the dynamic between Ron and April in general.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we start to see April start to care about somebody other than herself.
Yeah.
And she looks at Ron as like a father figure who is completely different than her actual father figure, her dad, that we meet later on in this season. And so Ron is just this like, he carries a level of apathy that April really respects.
Yes.
Because he doesn't care about his job, but he deeply cares about the people that he works with, even though he doesn't know how to communicate that. And that's part of the growth of his character over the seasons. And so this is just one of those things where we start to see April become more a part of the family and bonding with Ron.
Based on the way that this episode started, I never would have guessed we would have gotten to this deep of analysis, because that was really, really well said. So hopefully people stuck to this point.
I doubt it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So this is really just for the future people who found this probably in a pit.
Literally have nothing else to do. Yeah. No, I love Ron and April's relationship, and it's a really wholesome, non-creepy, like just throughout the series. I mean, there's so many great moments. The crows. I mean, so much stuff that we'll get into. It's really great to see them like make these different relationships and I don't know, make them good. Like, it's easy to create so much tension in these shows where characters hate each other, want to argue and are mean. Like, that's why we get Jerry, the punching bag. But, Ron and April, it's really fun to watch them do kind of their thing. And yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to get into more of that.
Yeah, I think they are really for me, they're the life of this show. Like Chris Pratt is great. Andy is really funny. But the life of the show, I really do think is Ron and April.
Yeah.
And I think they're the ones who have the biggest character transformation throughout the series. So, yeah, they're fun. I like them. I like them. So let's talk a little bit about what happens here, because it cuts between the three plot lines, and it is it would be confusing, I think, to go back and forth between the three because they're all so different.
Sure.
And this one, the most different. And so Ron makes the mistake of sneezing, and so he's sitting there in his office, not moving at all, because he didn't want to hurt himself even further. And he's like, "I'm Ron. I got this." He doesn't think it's going to be a problem. And so April comes in, and he's like, "April, can you give me my lunch?" And she's like, "Oh, you want me to go get it?" It's like, "No, it's just there on the table. Give it to me."
Okay, well, no, hold on. These are some of my favorite. We'll try to point these out as we go. But like when they actually use the camera to tell a joke, and it's not just because it's the camera, but just because when it's done well, it's so great because it is. He's just asking for his lunch, and we're like, "Oh, okay," typical thing for a boss to do, until we see that it's literally 2 feet away. Like the camera, pulls back. And that's when we see that his lunch is sitting there on his desk. He literally can't move 2 feet. So those kind of visual, those are so well done. Arrested Development does it sometimes. And I mean, lots of shows do it, but I think whoever's in charge of those kinds of jokes really does a great job on Parks and Rec. And they do it a lot in The Office and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I think the question that I always ask when I see that interaction is, how did it get there in the first place?
Yes. Postmates.
So like somebody from the cafeteria at City Hall, like brought him the food and left it there. And he either didn't care about them at the time or didn't want to appear weak. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he just like, yeah, right there's fine. He didn't say, no, put it closer to me.
This is the hard-hitting, in-depth analysis people come for. How did Ron's food get on the desk?
Yeah, there's these questions that come up.
Yes,
that it resonates with Ron as a character to not want to look needy to a stranger or to somebody who's so far beneath him.
Right.
Like, I don't need your help. And so
just
leave it there. Sitting there.
I'll figure it out. You can go.
Yeah, I'll get to it. So it's just that always makes me laugh. And so April was like, "Is this some kind of weird power trip?" He's like, "No, just please." And when he finally gets it, he can't bring his arms up to his face, so he just throws the food at himself, which is again hilarious just to watch him try to like throw a burger at his face.
Well, who hasn't done that?
Well, I haven't.
Oh, wow.
But I'm not against it.
You're missing out, man.
But I just know the most efficient food delivery system is really just like
a burrito.
Well, yes, everything on a tortilla is a path to world peace. Yeah. So, So April, that's one interaction. Later, April comes back and is like, "Are you okay? because she's worried about him. And so he's like, "I have a hernia." So she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to go. I'll get a car and I'll drive you there." Question.
And not only that, but she comes back after hours.
Yeah,
it is that I do think it's important because she is that person that you almost think that she wouldn't care, like, all right, whatever. But the fact that she comes back is just, I don't know. That's a big part of that, the beginning of that relationship.
Yeah, and so she has to go steal her dad's car and come back again. So this is her third trip to the office when she finally gets Ron, which raised the question: why didn't she just take Ron's car? There's like so many levels here of like, why are you doing this the hardest way possible? So anyway.
Because Ron probably rode a horse in or something, like that's just his style.
But sneezing is what aggravated his hernia. So
he admitted it was a mistake.
Yeah, I made the mistake of sneezing. So yeah. So anything else with Ron and April that we need to cover? I mean, I love that part of this episode. It is very, it showcases her personality more. Yeah, but
I like the little joke where she says, "Sorry, it took so long." Well, first the motion sensor lights get turned off on Ron, so he's just sitting there in the dark. He can't even. He's so incapacitated. He can't even turn on the motion lights. And then she comes back and she doesn't say sorry or anything. She's like, I had to wait till my dad fell asleep to steal the car. It's like, that's why. And Ron's like, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Like, it's 4 hours later. It's fine.
This is also as a part of Ron's life. Like, we don't have at this point much of his outside of work life figured out.
Right.
Like, we don't know what he does.
Yeah. No one's coming to find him.
Right. He is all alone. And so
how does an intern get back into City Hall after hours?
She knows how to steal her dad's car, so I'm sure she knows how to get into the building.
There you go.
There's a lot of public buildings that are open late, which is weird.
We should find them.
I wouldn't say we should find them, but like, I'm teaching a class at a local university, and it's an evening class, and I'm surprised how many doors are unlocked at like 9:30 p.m. It's just like, wow, these are all unlocked. People can just come into this building anytime. Interesting. So they do have security, so I'm not trying to throw shade.
Walk it back now.
Yeah, I'm totally walking it back.
All right. So what else do we have?
Okay, so let's go back to the top of the show. All right. So Leslie and Tom are in the pit, and Leslie's talking about the community garden and how great it's coming along. And then it cuts to a talking head with Tom, because Leslie believes for some reason that Tom is a master horticulturist, that he knows what plants are called. And every time she asks him a name, he just gives her a rapper name. So like the Ditties, the Bone Thugs and Harmoniums, and all these different names. And I think that's hilarious because
are coming along nicely.
Yes. Yeah. And like, it's just like, she's not listening really to what Tom's saying, because he's not trying to come up with something that doesn't sound fake. But she's just so into whatever she's doing that Tom knows, like, I can say whatever I want. She's not going to listen to what I'm saying.
But also, do you think that because he's seemingly showing that he knows what he's talking about, that is what allows him? Because what's he doing this whole time? He's sitting in a chair while Leslie's doing the work. And so
which is Tom's way. Like, he's always doing that.
Yeah. But I mean, is it because he is like, oh yeah, I know what I'm talking about. It's fine. I'll just be over here being the expert. And she just rolls with it. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. You don't have to help.
Yeah. She's very naive in a lot of ways. So, and maybe she's never heard of Bone Thugs and Harmony or Ludacris or Diddy. Maybe.
Yeah. Or, the difference between carrot tops and other spices.
Right. Because that's really the inciting incident in this whole thing, because she's looking at these carrots and she says the carrots are coming along nicely. It's like, well, the best way to know about those carrots is to roll them up in a joint and smoke them, because he thinks it's weed. So Tom doesn't know what weed looks like. Leslie doesn't know what weed looks like. But then it becomes a real problem for Leslie. So cuts to credits. She comes in to Ron's office. He's still not moving. And she's like, somebody planted a gateway drug in the community garden. He's like, okay. Again, Ron is like, whatever. And so this kicks her off on this stakeout with Tom, who is not really into doing anything. So,
well, and at that point, Ron says, just call the cops. This is their thing. He tells her right there. Just call the cops. But she doesn't want to, because she thinks it's going to be a scandal that drugs were found in her community garden on her lot.
Right. Which would bring about the ruin of her community garden.
Right.
And her park. So, yeah. All right. So they set up the stakeout outside of the pit, which also conveniently is close to Anne's house. And Anne and Leslie have already talked that they're going on a date that night. And so, not Anne and Leslie.
Yeah.
Anne and Mark are going on a date. And so Leslie is conveniently in a place where she can stake out the garden and see Anne and Mark on their date. She's brought the candy. She brought the dark clothes. She's brought the camera, all the things you need for a successful stakeout. Many, many pounds of candy.
candy necklaces, not like a good candy.
No.
And not like a variety of candies, candy necklaces.
Yeah, really gross. And I don't like those ever. Those are the grossest candy.
Why would people want to put sugar around their neck? I guess is my thing.
Yeah. And then eat it like slowly over time. So every time you take a bite of this candy necklace, just take one little circle of candy and then like it snaps back onto your neck. You just are throwing all kinds of germs all over yourself. You're gross.
Yeah, and
candy necklaces should be outlawed.
If you don't get
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
If you don't get a clean break on that, and you get a little bit of slobber on any of the adjacent candy beads, when it hits your neck, it's just going to get sticky, right?
Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, it's going to attract ants. You're going to have all sorts of problems.
And if you have ants climbing up to your neck, you have many, many ants. So this is bad news. Bad news all around. Yeah, so they're in the van, the park van, and
which is white without window, with only one window.
Right, which is a terrible like stakeout van because they're in the back. They're not even in the front seats of this van. And so they're in the van and they see Mark and Anne leaving to go on their date. And Tom is like, man, he's such a player. And he's like, yeah, anyway. That story is the least favorite of my story, part of this show, the Anne and Mark stuff. But then again, I hate Mark.
They're just so boring.
They are boring. But then there's a mysterious figure that's coming into the pit. And that mysterious figure is Andy Dwyer, who, as we saw in episode 1, is currently living in the pit.
Mm-hmm.
And so Tom and Leslie are trying to figure out, or like say, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, what are you doing? We're watching because somebody planted weed in the garden. He's like, I thought those were the tops of carrots. Again, so many people know that these are carrots. And but nope, Leslie is looking for a scandal. So so they enlist Andy to help with the stakeout. And so he comes into the van and she gives him a candy necklace and he eats it like right away. Throws the whole thing in his mouth, which then comes like the second favorite joke in this whole episode. Those have a string in it, to which Andy replies, not mine.
Yeah, this one didn't.
He ate the whole candy necklace, string and everything, and gets on a sugar high. And then they're like, you need to get some real food. He's like, yeah, I've only had fruits and vegetables. So they go and get Leslie and Chris then go to get burgers, leaving Tom alone at the van. And somehow Tom locks himself out, then tries to break in. Mark and Ann come home at the same time. They see Tom trying to break into the van. They call the cops. And then Tom confronts Louis C.K. playing Officer Dave, which is going to be an ongoing character for several episodes as Dave. Do you know Dave's last name? I don't know Dave's last name.
I don't. It's Officer.
It's Officer Dave. What do you think about Louis C.K. as Officer
Sanderson?
Dave?
It's Sanderson.
Yes.
This just in. Sorry,
Thank you.
My intern. It took a while for my intern to find it.
How you have an intern?
You don't?
No, I have my dog sleeping on the floor over here.
Well, she needs to get to work.
I guess.
What I thought, so, yeah. I mean, okay, it's hard not looking back. Like, if you don't look through the lens of the future, Louis C.K. is very funny. Like, if you just, just take the performance to this performance, I thought I remember watching it back in the day and going, this guy is, I didn't know much about him. This is one of my first times I had been.
That won't be the best choice of words, what you're thinking. This is the first time you've experienced comedy.
his comedy. And I just love how awkward he was, especially like later on when they interview him about how he feels about Leslie. It's just on point. It's great. So yeah, I thought it was really good because he's a perfect kind of combination. He's great as a Pawnee cop, where he's not a total, big city hard-headed cop, but he's also not an absolute, worthless goof. So I thought they did a really nice job of balancing this character of someone who, once you get past that very first layer of being a cop, he's actually okay. So I thought that was a nice choice.
Yeah. I think he does a really good job as well. Every time he's doing a talking head, he is talking like he's being deposed
Right.
for a court trial.
Yeah.
And so he's like very matter of fact. These are the details. And he will often give too many details about his feelings towards Leslie. But yeah, and they do that again later with police doing a series of talking heads where they're all like very matter of fact. These are the details. Like they're not trying to like spin it in any way. And I love that because, cops are like, they're supposed to be fact based and like give you the details that you need. And so that's what he does every time he's talking to the camera. And he's often like, I've said too much.
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah. So this will, so Tom is like, he is aggressively not cooperating with Dave because he thinks Dave is profiling him for being Indian while in a van, which a great joke. There's no stereotypes of Indians sitting in vans.
Yeah.
So Tom actually ends up getting arrested because he was being belligerent. And so that leads to Leslie and Mark and Anne going to the police station to try to bail Tom out, and she's throwing a fit. She hits the table like, no, several times. So it's very Leslie. Eventually, they get to a point where they're not going to arrest Tom, but they just need to keep him overnight. And so Leslie stays there. They start to build what could be a romance between Dave and Leslie. Because
when she says, when he's like, she's just going off and he says, ma'am, this is a police matter. And she says, well, it doesn't seem to matter to the police. He's like, okay, that was pretty good.
Yes, that was very funny. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, that was just a funny joke that they wrote into the show. It's a comedy show. So that was a funny joke that they did.
Yeah.
I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you. When Anne and Mark leave, they're like, Leslie, let us take you home. And she's like, no, Tom needs a friend here when he gets outside. Prison changes a man.
Prison.
So, she's there for him. So she wakes up, Tom comes out, and then Dave takes Leslie and Tom back to the garden because Leslie said somebody planted weed out here. So they go to the garden and Dave sees the alleged weed and it is carrot tops. Like, these are the tops of carrots. And then he's like, oh, is this your friend's house right over here that went on that date with that guy? I see what's happening. And Dave puts it all together. Like, this stakeout was just really a way to watch your friend. She's going out with this guy. And and so that kind of wraps up the episode. We see Leslie is having a hard time letting go of Mark, but at the same time, they're bringing a new interest into Leslie's life, Dave Sanderson. And so, is it Anderson? Sanderson.
Yeah.
Sanderson. So, yeah. And then that's kind of the end of the episode, right? I mean, not much else.
Not much else, except one of the big points, though, during this whole thing is Andy finds out that Anne is seeing somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
And then he actually
literally falls apart.
Yeah. Just fails into the pit. He's out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when the police come, he like dives into the pit. Oh man, that's so funny.
Okay. Now I think that there was weed in the garden. I think that Tom did kind of know. Leslie didn't, and Andy didn't. Because when they go, she makes the comment, it was here, saying that it was gone. And the only reason why I would not die on this hill, but I would say that this is something that come back, because later there's a character who admits to planting things in community gardens all over the town. So I'm just saying, whether they know it is or not, it's not that big of a deal. But just because of that joke, I think that, I don't know. Somebody came and took it. I don't know, which I think is maybe funny. I don't know.
They do leave a layer of mystery. As you see later, somebody has a tendency to plant illicit substances in community gardens.
Right.
So yeah. But overall, good second episode. They're moving things forward. We are missing from this episode altogether Donna and Jerry. They're not in this at all, which is a bummer because they are great characters.
Yeah.
But overall, it seemed like the main people in this episode, they all had important things to do to move their characters forward. Other than Anne and Mark, but they're boring and I don't care.
Yeah.
So
they are the beige of this show.
Oh, yes, they are. The beige. That's a perfect descriptor of how boring they are.
Yeah.
Anne gets much more interesting, but paired with Mark, bleh. That's how I feel.
That's good. That's a good descriptor. The button on it is Tom comes out and says at the very end when they're in the courtyard, Anne and Mark are sitting in the courtyard, and he's like, "Hey, thanks for being racist and calling the cops on me," and walks off.
Thanks for arresting the cops and making them think I'm a criminal.
Yeah.
And actually, we thought you were a pervert.
Yeah, I still do. Yeah, that was good. So, what overall? How did you feel? How'd you feel about that episode? How'd you feel about the characters and the story and their arcs?
I felt good. I liked this episode. I do think. I think adding Officer Dave into the story is good. Because this is one of the ways that they start to build the town of Pawnee a little bit more. And Pawnee is a wonderful place. So, so I thought overall it's like, this is good what they're doing. Like, it's a very like tight knit cast. And so anytime they build a longer arc with a character, I think that's helpful. So,
yeah.
What about you?
Oh no, same thing. I think that was a good way as well to kind of get Mark more out of the picture, because if him and Anne break up, we're not as invested because it's not our main character. So once he eventually leaves, it's not that devastating. Not that it would have been. It's always hard to lose a beige wall, but what do you do?
I recently did a drywall project in my house, and it is currently beige.
Oh, nice.
So
is it a Brandanowitz beige?
That's actually what the texture spray on texture thing said. It was Brandanowitz beige, and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Wow,
that's really good. Good job, Parks and Rec marketing department, licensing wall texture,
getting that Gildan money.
Gildan money?
They make paint.
Oh, right, yeah, the paint company. I thought you meant like it was like a horse that was castrated.
Oh no, gilded. Gilding?
Gilder.
Oh, it's a gold horse that was castrated. I
don't know. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a very fast horse either way. So.
And that's season 2, episode 2.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
The stakeout. The next episode is also good. Wow. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. But yeah, we'll be back to record season 2, episode 3, and we look forward to discussing that and all that stuff. So, yeah, with all that said, I guess that's it, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll see you later sometime in the future.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Bye.
Bye.